All right, we will go ahead and call our December 15th, 2022 meeting to order. First item unfinished business, approval of the minutes from October 20th, 2022.
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Line down to new business, request approval of receipt of the independent auditor's report and annual comprehensive financial report.
So today we're coming for you to ask for approval and acceptance of our annual comprehensive financial report for June 30th, 2022. I have Mr. Kaflar here from Potter and Company, who will speak on the financial statements. I just thought I'd walk you through the general process. As you know, I came in July, and that's sort of the beginning of the audit process, and I want to thank Michael, Sandy Kane, and Billy Ferris. They had the general ledger, everything in good financial order. We worked through July and August and September. The auditors are here for about a week looking at everything. The financial statements are produced in-house here at WSACC. And so we produce those, and then we review our auditors in October, sent to the local government commission at the end of October. And at the end of November, we submitted those to the Government Finance Officers Association, the certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting. And then if they're approved, this will be the 25th year that WSACC will receive this award. Of course, we fully expect that'll happen. Did have a lot happen in last fiscal year with our bond rating at a AA rating and the revenue bonds that were issued in May for the expansion project. And I'll turn it over to Keflar for the financial.
Thanks, Wendy. Glad to be here again. Just want to thank your authority and everybody here. Just thanks again for the opportunity to be of service to y'all. I don't know how many years we've done this now. It's been more than one. And yeah, y'all got a great staff here. You really do. I mean, y'all keep on top of your financial position. You know, at these meetings on our different basis. You know, I was here when Mike was finance director for several years, and he kind of passed the baton to Shelley, and now Wendy's got it. So you've got a great team here. You know, I want to thank them for helping us, because we know that when we come in and do this, we're interrupting their daily routine. So we try to get in and out as fast as we can. And that type of thing. But I think Wendy and Shelley both did a great job this year. Thanks for coming in. And so with that, I will just kind of go over some of the highlights. We're not going to go over this whole book tonight. So, and it is a book. So, but we're just going to touch on a couple highlights. A couple things I want to touch on is we have issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements of the Water and Sewer Authority of Cabarrus County as of June 30th, 2022. This is what we commonly refer to as a clean opinion. This says that in all material aspects, the financial position of the Water and Sewer Authority was fairly presented as of June 30th, 2022. If you're keeping notes at home, and if you've got other reports and that type of thing, the report this year does look a little different than it has in the past. But basically, the nuts and bolts of it is unmodified opinion, no different than it has been in any other year. Second thing I just kind of want to touch on is your statement of net position, which is basically your balance sheet, shows you your assets and liabilities for this year, and that type of thing. There we go. You'll see the first item up there that you'll see, and if we had a comparative column over there, you can see that your cash and cash equivalents were up tremendously from what they were last year, but that is going to be in large part due to the bond proceeds that were received before the end of the year, and then also to the settlement for the biosolids came in during the year too, so that increased your cash position that you had. Cash position, and there's another statement that we'll look at too, which is your statement of cash flows, which kind of shows you where your cash came in and out for the year. But you'll see there that if you look at that, your cash position at last year, June 30th, 2021, was 34 million, and this year is like 107. But again, part of that big increase is going to be from your bond proceeds that were issued before the year, and then also to the settlement of the biosolids situation in litigation there. So total current assets that you had on hand were over $11 million for this year. Coming down, the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on too is just coming all the way down to the bottom is your statement of net position that you see down there, which is basically your equity that you had on hand at the end of the year. And part of that is kind of reserved by what your net investment in your capital assets are. That's that 129 number right there. And then part of it's going to be restricted with your development fees. That's the $5 million there, but then your unrestricted that you had available there was 36,790 compared to last year. That number last year was around 20. So you had an increase in your unrestricted net assets as well. Next page is Exhibit B, which is your statement of revenue and expenses and change in net position. This is basically what we call an income statement in the profit world. You'll see there that your operating revenue for the year was almost 17.5 million. That was down just a little bit from what it was at the end of last year. At the end of last year, it was like 18 million. So down some, but nothing alarming. Total operating expenses pretty much on par with what they have been in the past. One of the big items that I always like to touch out with y'all is the fact that depreciation, which is that second to the last number there underneath operating expenses, that's always a huge number for y'all. And that's a non-cash item. And you'll see that as you as you would go through your cash flow statement and that kind of thing. But that's a big number. That's a big expense that you have every year. That is just, that's what drives down your operating income from one year to the next. It's just that the depreciation amount that you have here is so huge. So you did have an operating loss for the year of $2 million. And coming down before you get into your capital contributions and your extraordinary item from the legal settlement from the biosolids litigation, you had a loss before capital contributions, extraordinary items at 2.3, but taking into consideration those items, your total net position ended up changing for the positive 13 million this year, 13,399. So you had an increase in your net position for this year of that amount. The next statement that I'll just touch on is the statement of cash flows, and this is basically where we take your net income that we just looked at for your change in revenues and expenses in that position. We basically turn things into a checkbook for you here. This shows you where your cash came in, where your cash went out, and so on and so on. And you're going to see a whole bunch of positive cash flow indicators here, which is not to be unexpected considering you had $65 million worth of bonds that were issued, and then also to the litigation fee that came in effect. So your cash flow from operations is still very positive, and it always has been, again, because part of that is because depreciation is such a large non-cash item that you have on your statement of changes and revenues. So your total cash provided from net operating activities for this year was almost 4.3 million. And the net cash provided by your capital and related financing activities for this year were almost 68.5 million. Now, included in there too, in that section is going to be items that you had for capital outlay. And you'll see there that the total cash that was paid for like capital outlay items during the year, that's including construction in progress and other stuff that got put in service this year too, was almost $10.5 million. Also included there is payment of your principal on long-term debt and also to interest. So coming down, thank you. You'll see there, that's where we kind of just show you that change in your cash position from one year to the next. The last statement that I wanted to go over is just kind of like budget performance for the operating fund for this year. You'll see there that you budgeted total operating revenues of around 17 million. You came in a little bit above that. that for this year, about a positive variance of that, about $500,000. Oh, is that? not-
I must need to roll up some more.
Okay, sorry, I'm sorry. I just started rattling off.
Schedule.
Other way. No, is that one not in there? Okay. All right, so if you had your budget to actual statement that was on this, on the screen. Couple of things I just wanted to point out here would be that, you did have a positive, your total positive, variance in your revenues from this year to last year. You'd budgeted about 17 million, ended up being 17.5. In addition, the budgeted total expenditures for this year of like 22 million. You ended up only spending like 12 million. So you had another positive variance there. And then also too, you had appropriated the $7 million of your fund balance during the year. You actually didn't have to dip into that reserve during the year. And so you actually had a positive change for the year before you got into anything else about 7.5.
That's page 13 of your agenda package.
And that is all I had to go over. If I'd answer any questions or anything that you have. Just thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you. Questions? We will entertain a motion to, I guess we are approving the receipt of these reports.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank y'all, and I hope everybody here has a great and Merry Christmas.
John, appreciate it.
All right.
Moving on to number 2, write off of some uncollectible fees.
Come to you today, for approval to write off an uncollectible receivable of $7,828 from Clearwater Septic and Dumping. This is from June, July, August, and September of 2021. Unfortunately, the business closed. There was multiple attempts to collect this, but at this point, we see it as uncollectible and we need to remove it from our financial statements. So if ever they were go back into business or try to come back, or like I said, go back into business, we would collect those before we would let them move forward. And a new, the finance department implemented an accounts receivable policy last November after this issue, I guess, happened. So I'm requesting that the board approve a write-off of $7,828.15 for Clearwater Septic and Dumping.
Is there any discussion? Entertain a motion to approve. Motion to approve, Chairman. Motion, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion and second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. There has been a request to move item 3 until after we come out of closed session. So assuming there is no disagreement with that, we will move that item. Very good. All right, we will continue on number 4, approval of some condemnation resolutions for the Lower Cottle Creek project.
I'm gonna present that since Chad's still ill. Dealing with a lot of sickness in WSACC right now, but there's a few still here. We're asking for approval to authorize us to condemn 4 properties. We have made multiple attempts to work with this parties to reach a settlement. We have we have finalized 45 of the right of ways or easements. We have 14 pending, 8 are under review by the owners right now. 6 have requested some revisions on the alignment, but these 4, we've reached an impasse. We make multiple attempts. We really hate to go to condemnation, but some people are just adamant about they're not going to allow us to cross their property or to get an easement, so we're asking for authorization to condemn these properties. Any questions, we'll be glad to try to answer them.
So it's not just about money.
One of the owners demanded that we give them capacity so they could develop some property, and we're just unable to do that, those kinds of things.
I assume this won't affect the schedule for the project.
Yeah. Once we file a condemnation, we can proceed with using the property.
So they're all just refusals. There's no title issues, can't get in touch with the owner.
No, these are just people who are adamant about not reaching some settlement. We work with this firm on setting these up legally, so there's no issues.
We can do all these at once.
Yeah, we can do all four of these at once. I mean, these are, you know, just to get easement rights. I mean, these are small dollar amounts. I mean, they range from literally $1,600 to $12,000. And so we, you know, the actual settlement amounts might be a little bit higher than that, but you know, it's in that range. And so we need to get this approval so we can send out the 30-day notice of condemnation. And then that just starts the clock after that. So
We don't anticipate any problems with the other 14.
Well, 8 of them are currently being reviewed by the owners, waiting on their signature. And then the other ones basically access easements. They have asked us to maybe change some routes or things to access their property, so we've done some realignments to make them happy and then submit them again, but we don't anticipate it.
I'd make the motion to approve the resolutions.
Second.
That's good. And a second for approval. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Michael. Number 5, approval of construction contract for dredging of Lake Howell, Mr. Hahn.
Absolutely. Come to you tonight, talk about Lake Howell. We have talked about this in recent months, I believe back in April. We've got a study with Withers Ravenel going on relative to this Kannapolis intake, which is at the northern end of Lake Howell near Highway 3. So we've got that study ongoing. It's about 98% complete at this point. But in mid-November, Kannapolis staff contacted us and asked about dredging around their intake. They wanted to resume use of that intake. As we've discussed in the past, that intake has just been in an area where silt is a real issue. Silt deposition coming into that area is a real issue. So this contract will be to dredge around 4,000 cubic yards plus or minus from that area around the intake. That's somewhere between a very minimum dredging and a longer term sort of effort, you know, that we could undertake. But that is hoped to have them enough room around the intake that, you know, the next few major storms coming through aren't likely to have a significant impact in that area. So we did reach out to prospective bidders after we were contacted by Kannapolis, and working with those, we've got a apparent low bidder based on a certain number of days that they would be out there to get the 4,000 cubic yards of material. They're looking to dredge that from around the intake and then to dewater that using some geotextile tubes that are on some adjacent land that WSACC actually owns. So this the bid from the low bidder is around $210,000. We have included some allowances in what Wendy will present to you here shortly relative to things like grading for an area to place the geotubes. That needs to be a fairly flat area so we can make the most use out of the volume that are in those tubes for dewatering. And then placement of that material afterwards. So those tubes sit out there for a while. They dewater kind of naturally, drain over time. They kind of bake out there, for lack of a better term, and dewater. And so after a period of weeks or months, depending on how the weather goes, we would cut open those tubes, take that material off and place it somewhere else. So Wendy, I believe, sorry, Miss Wendy, I believe we were asking for 300,000 total. Yeah, so of that, the dredging cost is about 210,000, and the rest are allowances for the other costs for grading. And then for the removal and spreading that material on another site. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Geotextile tubes, will that be on the property where that common septic tank is?
No, it will be just, it'll be on the lake side of that property. So it's, I believe it's a separate parcel, but it won't be over the.
Has WSAC done this before for this intake since it was? I'm assuming we have.
I believe so. It predates my employment here, so it's been more than 8 years ago, at least. It's been a good while. Michael, I don't know if you can remember.
We've done it, I'm just, it wasn't the same method, but we have grades there.
Sure. I believe we had a point where it was especially dry and we were maybe able to get mechanical means of like a long arm backhoe basically out there. We're looking at using hydraulic dredging this time around. That's what's been recommended to us, and given where the lake is, you know, lake's fairly full at this point. That seems to make the most sense.
So Kannapolis has not been using the intake?
They have not used this intake within the last, I believe, 4 years, if I'm correct there. 3, 4, 5 years, somewhere in there.
I know we've talked about this before, and we were talking about maybe exploring other options than dredging.
Yes,
And one of those was actually moving the intake.
yes, sir.
I'm sure that moving the intake is gonna cost way more than $300,000.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So is this just a temporary kind of thing just to get the service back to Kannapolis?
It is temporary. It's unknown, you know, it's dependent on the weather and the flows that are coming in and the sediment coming in for how long this solution will hold up. Dredging is always in some manner a temporary kind of thing. So the study does contemplate moving the intake as one option. We have shared the preliminary draft study with Kannapolis, and we've sent comments back and forth with the consultant engineer. So that's something that, you know, we'll need to consider, I guess, in Kannapolis, we'll need to consider. But this kind of addresses their short-term request and their short-term need of pulling from the lake.
What's the estimated time on this? I understand it's very variable.
Sure. So they have based their quote on a 20-day duration. It's pretty quick with apparently when you can use these geotextile tubes versus like a mechanical dewatering. We are hoping they could be out on site sometime in January. We'd have to finalize that with them, but that's pretty quick in the dredging world to get everybody mobilized and out there, you know, for that effort.
Mention the size of these tubes, obviously.
Sure, these are, I believe, 60-foot diameter tubes, and they're 100 feet long each. Yes, they're.
Large.
We wouldn't fit one in this room, for sure.
Yeah, I have to go by and take a look at that.
That's what I said, hey.
All right, any other questions for Thomas? No, we'll entertain a motion to award this contract.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. So we got a project and now we need to pay for it.
Right, so we need a budget amendment so I can pre-audit the contract. So we will appropriate retained earnings at $300,000 and put that in the expenditure maintenance line items. So I request that you approve the budget amendment. So we can pre-audit the contract.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, number 7, some updates to WSAC's Health and Safety and Health Incentive Program. Ms. Robin.
Thank you. WSAC implemented its Safety and Health Incentive Program in 2007. And we celebrated its 15th year of this incentive program. And what I bring to you tonight is just to make some changes as we have changed in our benefit status with our medical insurance and looking at the cost and expense of the program. So the language under supporting good health allows us, instead of doing co-pays on wellness visits, which with medical insurance, you may or may not know, there's not co-pays included anymore because wellness visits are all covered at 100%. So to encourage our employees to continue to have their physicals and their eye exams and their blood work and their dental work done, we would like to just pay a one-time $50 premium to them for completing that, turning in the appropriate paperwork. So that's the first change in the incentive program. And the second is under rewards and recognition. That safety incentive program had a caveat to it that if you had been in the program for X amount of years, you receive more money. And we've changed that chart and we've stopped that at 20 years. And $300 is the max on that. So I would ask for your approval for the changes to the safety and health incentive program.
Any questions?
Approve.
Second motion.
Second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, now updates to retirement and 401k.
North Carolina retirement plan and plan documents state that we need to include all gross wages in our 401k contribution. In the past, since 1995, is that correct? Since 1995, WSACC has calculated 401k its 401k contribution to the base pay. And with the plan document stating that in North Carolina's plan document, WSACC is a part of that plan, so we have to comply with that plan document. So we're asking the board to update we want to update our 8.12 retirement and 401k retirement program, which is in our personnel policy, to state gross wages versus base wages in our calculation.
All right, any questions or discussion? No, we'll entertain a motion for approval.
Approve. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving into reports, Rocky River expansion. Thomas, you doing this one?
I am. All right, so come to you with a presentation on the expansion, a few updates for text and more interestingly, some pictures of what's going on out there. So this one's kind of the text heavy slide. Crowder is continuing to do really good work. They are there, they are working. We have not found that they've made excuses like we hear, from some contractors sometimes. They've completed many of the wall pours for aeration basin 6. So you'll be able to see shortly, it's coming up out of the ground here. That's been nice to see. They've completed excavation for the Neff junction box, and they have backfilled around a couple of those EQ basin related vaults. They have completed some blasting work for rock removal near the equalization basin. Unfortunately, we did find some rock out there beneath that area for the equalization basin, and they were able to take care of that with 2 shots that they have pulled in the last few weeks here. They have demolished the existing maintenance canopy and the existing maintenance canopy pad, and they are working on the new maintenance canopy pad now. As a reminder, that's moving because the new lower building will be in the place where it occupied previously. Crowder, they've received some shipments of some early electrical equipment, which is certainly good to see. We've got a lot of electrical equipment that we still need to come in, and also some large diameter piping. That was a concern for them as well, being able to get that piping out there. So it's good to see that at the site. So they've continued to work. We've continued to work with them. Everybody trying to mitigate any potential issues with sourcing equipment for phase 3 and the electrical upgrades. So that is ongoing. I have a few pictures here. First from aeration basin 6. These are kind of two opposite ends of the aeration basin on your, let's see if I can use this thing. On your left over here, that's the upstream end of the aeration basin, and on the right, they kind of started from the downstream end with their wall pours and are working their way upstream. The good news is they have the vast majority of their reinforcing steel in place for the whole thing now. So they're just working their way through with the wall pours. There's about 25 wall pours in total. And they're moving along at a clip of 2 to 3 per week. This is a view from the upstream end of aeration basin 6 looking towards the downstream. So previously we were kind of looking from the side over there. They were pumping concrete for a wall pour on this day. So you can see that they're making their way towards this upstream end. The NEF junction box, this is a junction box where we're just intersecting an existing pipe. You can see the existing pipe supported, exposed and supported over there on the left-hand side with the chains going down to it. This is quite a deep excavation. It's right next to the road. So that's the reason for all their shoring. New effluent flume, they're just getting started on this. This is adjacent, as far as the concrete goes, at least. They've been working on excavation for a while. But this is right next to the existing chlorine contact basin, so this will be our new effluent flow measurement area. At the equalization basin, this dark area kind of towards you here with the soil that's exposed is the first rock that they blasted. So you can see kind of the pile from blasting there. They have since blasted that far side kind of in the background of the picture as well. And when it dries up, they will be working more on getting that soil out of the way. Large diameter piping, this is 42-inch diameter piping that's come in. It takes up a lot of real estate out there, but we are happy to see it there because that was one particular long lead time item. The maintenance canopy, you can see kind of two worlds here. On the left-hand side is where the existing maintenance canopy sat. It's recently been demolished, and they just worked on getting the slab broken up this week. And then on the right-hand side, the area where the excavator is sitting will be kind of the center of that new maintenance canopy. Okay, so we come to work plan for the next month. They are continuing work on duct bank installation. They will be able to continue on that kind of in earnest in January. They are forming and pouring the slab for the NEF junction box. That was the deep excavation with the shoring that we saw. They're going to continue excavation for the EQ basin and NEF facility since they have the rock out of the way now. They're going to continue excavation and shoring for junction box 101, which is a deep excavation behind the main pump station. Continue some wall section placements, finish out aeration basin 6, hopefully. And continue work at the chlorine contact basin, that effluent flume, and at the new maintenance canopy that we just saw. I'll be happy to take any questions you might have.
How are your access roads holding up?
That's a great question. So it's the roads themselves are good. We've got a lot of mud at the site, and they've been good to us when we've asked and when they've noticed it. They've been good to keep that clean. Our roads within the plant, we're having to cut lots of those different places. So right now we're envisioning at the end of phase 4, we'll clean all of that up and make those roads kind of regular truck, pickup truck sort of roads again.
Then I'm guessing you're seeing a lot more traffic.
Yeah. Right. The concrete trucks on the days they pour, they're between 7 and 11, 12 concrete trucks coming in. They're running laps back and forth to up here to.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. We make a concerted effort in Concord to provide these photos, not as much the text, because that's a little more, we feel like the council needs, but it's been very helpful for them to actually see the progress. And we are actually going to implement, we're having our allocation meeting on Tuesday, and we're going to start doing this presentation at the beginning of every allocation meeting because we have a lot of developers that attend the meetings. And so very appreciative of the updates and the and I send it to the board when you send it to us, Mike. So it's been very helpful. We've been trying to use that information to push it out into the community too, to help them to understand that we're on it, we're on top of it, we recognize the importance of it. So
Sure.
thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And I did that very same thing, Jennifer, for the Board of Commissioners. So, that's getting the word out that we're not closed for business yet.
We're working on it.
Yeah, is rain this week? Caused many issues on.
So it's been surprising. I think today they've had their office staff, they're always busy. They're always running down, where their next delivery is coming in and what schedules are for things. Today has really been the first day where I've seen a real drop off in the field staff. Today was just a lockout. But these folks, when it's raining lightly, they're still putting up forms and tying everything together and doing everything for them. So that's been really impressive. Some contractors, when you see rains 20% the forecast, you can bet they won't be there for a few days, but these folks have stuck with it. Really appreciate it.
I've been down there on some rainy days, misty days, and they were down there working and even pouring concrete sometimes.
Right. Concrete doesn't mind a little bit of rain.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, Thomas. And we will move into public comment. I don't see anyone here prepared to speak, but I would like to give Michael a minute to briefly talk about the meeting that he led this week.
We met with the Secretary of DEQ this week. All the representatives from the jurisdictions were invited, and the local legislators were all there. In the meeting. The meeting basically focused around what DEQ could do to help us during our capacity crunch. We talked to them about changing the low factor reductions. We talked to them about being able to allocate capacity sooner as we're under construction. We talked about other concerns like interbasin transfers and some water issues that we're going to be facing. They were very receptive to our comments. Said they would follow up with us on several things, but I don't know that we'll get a lot of changes, but at least they know that our local legislators and all our community leaders are really interested in this, and I think they understand the importance of that. We talked about also about direct discharges for certain industries and maybe package plants if the municipalities would take over ownership, that would give them some comfort. They would be operated right until we could have additional capacity to take those offline. So they said they would look into those issues and see what they could do to help us during this capacity crunch. So Jeff was there.
Yeah, I think it was a great unified show of support.
Right.
That we're all in this together, and I think that message was received. That everybody's committed to getting by this tough point, and if we can get them to come with us, that'd be the best for all of us. So.
Yeah. William was there also.
I was there too, and Daryl and Mike Legg from the board were also there. So it was a good showing. Senator Newton was there, Representative Crutchfield, Representative Baker, and their staffs were there. And so that was good because Crutchfield, he just got elected, so it's kind of educating him, and then Baker is back for a second term, but just continue to educate her. And obviously Senator Newton is just a great asset for us, and I think he understands the challenges we have, and I think he, is going to follow up with Secretary Beiser after that. And so it was kind of a continuation. We had met with Senator Newton, and he come and met with us all in February here, and we had a good meeting. So this was kind of a follow up to that. And yeah, encouraging.
So who were the folks from DEQ in attendance?
Secretary Beiser, and then kind of her the liaison between DEQ and the General Assembly, and her name just
Somebody.
yeah. Joy, and it just slipped my mind. But she's the point person. She's probably even more technical. She seemed to have more of the technical expertise. And she will still liaison with the General Assembly. So the idea is, both a solution with DEQ or a solution with the General Assembly.
You seem to be very familiar with our flow factor reduction request.
Yes. Michael did a great job. He had to pinch hit for Chad at the last second. Michael did great.
All right, that is it for our public agenda, except for again, that item number 3 that we will come out of closed session at the end to handle. At this time, we will entertain a motion to enter closed session authority of GS 143, 318, 11A1 and A3.
The move.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Uh,
All right. Good. All right, we will come back to new business item 3. We will entertain a motion relative to the execution of the grant agreement with Prime Beverage. Is there a motion?
I would make a motion that we table executing the sub-grantee agreement.
Second.
All right, motion to table and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is tabled. All right, having no more business, we will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion a second. All those in favor?